Zen Friends, it's me, Kasey, and I am back with another episode of Kasey Talks Critters. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Jess Vasquez, and she is so amazing. She's a former vet tech / vet assistant like myself, and her husband co-own this amazing company called Lil Monsters. They mainly focus on New Caledonia geckos, but Jess has a very super sweet spot, or sore spot, sweet spot? She has a soft spot, that's the term, for Tegus. She's got about 13 of these guys, so I figured she'd be a great professional to talk to about Tegus and answer any of our fan questions. So if you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified for more episodes. We're going to be giving you a brand new Kasey Talks Critters episode once a month. So, Miss Jess, how are you?
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kasey.
Oh, awesome. So I guess what I want to talk about, like, we'll just get right into it. And I want to know your experience with animals. Where did you get started?
I started really young, where I used to bring home 6 stray cats from the streets and be like, Mom, look what I found. And she's like, oh my God, no, put that back where you found it. And little me didn't know you're not supposed to feed cats ham and cheese, but I did it. And I was like, they love ham and cheese. I used to share with them. I always loved reptiles, but my mom, being a Korean mom, was like, that's not a girl thing to do. We don't have reptiles here. Look at this kitten, look at this puppy. That's more our style. And so it wasn't until I met Anthony. I met him in 2007, and he kind of had his reptiles. He was like, he didn't want to tell me he had them. He's like, this girl's gonna think I'm weird. So, and then when I found out, I was like, oh my God, you have reptiles. Can I see them? And then he's just like, yeah, I have to feed my boa today. I'm like, can I do it for you? Can I feed them for you? He had tokays at the time. He had a leopard gecko, and I bonded with all of them. Yeah. And he kind of told me his life dream of oh, I wanted to breed cresteds. I've bred Leos in the past. And I'm like, yes, how do you do that,
Yeah.
And so he took me to my first reptile expo. Mm-hmm. And it was a NARBC when they used to be in California. Mm-hmm. And that's where I got my first bearded dragon from Sandfire. And then we also got a crested gecko at the time. Mm-hmm. He's had them previous, but he didn't when I first met him. Mm-hmm. So we got one crested gecko and one bearded dragon. Mm-hmm. And it kind of fueled this fire for us. Yeah. And one crested gecko ended up being 5, and 5 ended up being 20. And then he was like, well, I was, when I was a teenager, I thought, talking to my uncle, what if this was a business? What if I had a reptile business? And I was like, yes, let's do this. So Little Monsters was his childhood dream. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just let's do this together. Oh. And we started that in 2008.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. It's couple goals. Oh my
God.
Yeah, I literally
sure.
have goosebumps. It was so cute. Oh, I love you guys. Amazing. I think that is fantastic that you have been able to turn your passion into a career. And that is a big part of what I like to bring people on this show, to teach our fans and our customers, especially our younger fans, this is how you get into it. It's possible. You can have a fulfilling, happy life in your work. It is possible. Mm-hmm. And I want to share that with them to get them to where they need to be. So thank you.
And we were very fortunate to have met Alan Rapace so early on. Mm-hmm. We got a handful of geckos from him. In the beginning, that was kind of the foundation of our breeding groups, was from Alan Rapace. And we just befriended him. He became our mentor. He taught us a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And especially because I've always liked vet med, just learning and how do you take care of these things? What are the signs to look for? So just having that as a background too kind of helped.
I think a great segue now is, let's talk about Tegus. You have so much experience with them. I know you love them so much. You're so excited. So why do you think Tegus are so cool?
Tegus are so cool because they're so personable. One, they're really smart, so they recognize you. The first Tegu I got was in 2007, 2008. And I told Anthony, I lied to him actually. I didn't tell him. I was like, they get a little bit bigger than bearded dragons. They're really cool. I actually treated my first Tegu like a bearded, so I carry her on a leash like we'd go to the grocery store. Okay, she did not like that. She was like, why am I so high up, you know?
Yeah.
But we would treat her like a dog, and we'd take her to the front yard and throw like blueberry treats for her. And so that's where it started. Unfortunately, the biggest breeder at the time passed away. And so Tegus became a little hard to find. You know, they were really difficult to come by. So we only had the one. And then we found a blue, and that was just so rare back then. And we were just like, what is this? Like, because to us, it looked like just a smaller black and white. It was, but it had like a blue tinge to it, but it was also high white. So we got really obsessed with blues back then, but we couldn't find them anywhere. So even just seeing one at a show for like breeders, like, hey, like this is one of my breeders, this is what I'm working on, we're just like, oh my God, like that is what we want to do. We want to make blues.
Yeah.
But actually we haven't bred our entire collection. So we have like we've built it where we're just like, this is really nice, this will look really good, like what if we, you know, this, and we're okay with the hybrids too. We're okay with breeding the reds with the blues or the black and whites, like they make really beautiful combinations.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But on a breeding standpoint, like I think it gets hard because of who's purchasing them. People don't realize that, you know, they're small and they're really cute, but they grow up really big. They grow, and depending on what they're eating, their appetite, if there's others around, like if, you know, like they can grow almost full size in a year,
Yeah.
you know. So you have this little like, oh, I brought it in a deli cup at the show, to needing like that 40-gallon isn't gonna cut it. Like you can do it for a couple months, but depending on how fast they're growing, like they need a lot of space and they eat a lot of food.
Absolutely. You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. And I think that is something that I
Yeah.
see for sure when I go to shows and I'm like, oh my God, baby Tegus, you're so cute.
So cute.
But it's like, oh my God, you're a big lizard. You're
Yeah.
going to be a big lizard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. For me, my experience with Tegus is mainly, you know, the ones that would come into the clinic for appointments. We have Rosie here. She's a red Argentine Tegu, and she's absolutely amazing. I'm obsessed with her. We do a lot of training together, and she's just brilliant. Like, she's just such a cool lizard. Like, and she, you
Yeah.
know, she's got her sassiness, etc. But like, she is so smart, and she's very food motivated. Like, we can train her to pretty much do anything because she's got that
Yep.
high food motivation, and
Yeah.
so they are fun for that. To like, you know, we're doing clicker training. And next, I really want to get into
Oh
target
wow.
training.
I
Yeah.
haven't tried that. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So for clicker training, what I do, I just like, click, give a bug, click, give a bug, and then like when she does
Like
something that I want,
for
click.
dogs, like training a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. That's cool.
Yeah, but it's totally been
So
working.
I've towel trained mine.
Oh.
So they do have a crazy feeding response. Yeah, if people don't know, like they're just like, oh, he's trying to bite me. I'm like, no, like
He's
you
hungry.
have to like decipher like, is this a friend or is this food? Why is it moving? What is it? And sometimes they're just like in a frenzy where they're just like food, you know?
Yeah.
So I've towel trained them where I just like show them my towel or their towel,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I'm gonna come out. So they'll kind of like be inquisitive and come out on the towel, and I'll like lift them up. They don't like being restrained. Like
Yeah.
that's when you're gonna fight with your tegu. Like they're just like, oh my God, something has captured me. You know, they're gonna thrash around. They're gonna death roll on you. So I kind of like, you have to build trust with them so they know that you're not capturing them and you're not restraining them. You're just kind of letting them be. So you start at a young age to let them know like you're not trying to hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Food
No,
helps, but
yeah. No.
and training is just always, you always have to do it. Like
Yeah.
so you can't just like, even if you get a really nice like like hand tamed one from a breeder, like you have to keep up with it, because the moment you just put them in an enclosure and feed them, they're like, this is my life. Like I stay in here, this is my safety zone, I eat here, and there's no reason to bond with you.
Yeah. No, it
So
definitely. They get in their ways, and they're very comfortable to be solitary, but they're also very comfortable if you bond with them to be that
exactly.
snuggly lizard. But it
Yep.
does take so much time and so much trust to get there, for sure.
Yep.
Hmm.
And if you do one thing wrong, sometimes they're just like, well, I remember, because they're really smart. Like, I remember this one time, you know?
This one
So you
time this
have to
happened,
kind of
I'm not
like,
doing that again. Yeah.
yeah, so you kind of have to like retrain them, like, no, like,
Yep.
that's, you know?
Hmm.
And
Yeah. And it's like,
it's fun. It's fun and
yeah.
it's really rewarding, but
Hmm.
it's work.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of goes into, we talked a bit about why we like Tegus, but let's talk about some of the key points that might be, problems in our daily lives keeping reptiles. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
Tegus in captivity. Do you
Hmm.
why are there so many, do you think?
One, they're really prolific. So depending on what you're breeding, like you can have anywhere between 20 to 40 babies.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, so our first black and white, we bred her last season. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but it was a good experience for us because she did lay like 40 eggs and one baby hatched. One baby. So I have the one baby.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, that's
Wow.
why there's just so many. And also, too, people like the first time buyer,
Mm.
you know, first do your research. They get really big. They need a lot of space. They need time if you want to bond with them.
Mhm.
And a lot of these guys end up in rescues or they get placed in other homes because they're just like, you know what, they get overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
and also, one thing that people don't realize is that they do go through Tegu puberty.
Yes.
It's called gooberty.
Yes.
And so you're bonding with this like beloved Tegu. You've had this Tegu, and then the hormones kick in, and then they want nothing to do with you during that time. They're just like, don't touch me. Like they start spazzing out a little bit. They're kind of like, is there another Tegu around? And you're just like, what happened?
What happened to my baby? Yeah.
Yeah, just stick with them.
Yes.
They will grow. They grow out of that. I just like, I think people, they're just like, they kind of like get scared of that. And I'm just like, no, like
Yeah.
they grow out of it.
Yeah. Oh,
They
no.
calm down a lot after that period.
Yeah. Oh my God. So funny.
Yeah.
That is very good. So because okay, so my next question is, are they tricky to establish and have you found any methods that are useful? So I guess for me, the trickiest part would be the size, right? Like, it's
Hmm.
trying. So I see behind you, you have a nice big outdoor enclosure. You have all sorts
Yeah.
of really big enclosures. So maybe you can tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about those.
So when they're little, they'll utilize the space that you give them, but also they'll hide a lot because they don't know you.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to put a baby in here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going to put a juvenile in here. Like,
Hmm.
they're going to get overwhelmed really quickly. And
Hmm.
every time they see you, they're going to try to run away.
Hmm.
So I do start them off in something smaller depending on the size. So I will have like a 30 or 40 gallon.
Hmm.
But keep in mind, they do get upgraded as appropriate. Like, but once they have a smaller space, they kind of know, like, oh, I can come out. Like, this is where my food is. This is where I come out with. But things that for husbandry wise, you have to have UVB on them. Like
Hmm.
you absolutely have to have the proper UVB lighting for them.
Hmm.
You have to have the proper lighting
Hmm.
and they like to burrow. So they like to have enough substrate where they can completely cover their bodies, and that's what makes them feel safe.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
establishing them is all husbandry. Like do your research. You absolutely have to, and diet.
Mm.
If they're not getting enough calcium in their diet, like the babies will start twitching their back legs,
Oh.
and that's from not having enough like calcium. And
Hmm.
the like you have to check your UVB. You have to check the diet,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
other than that, if your husbandry is on point and you're feeding them the proper diet, like
It's a great pet.
they're like dogs. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like
No,
they're great.
absolutely. No, you're
Yeah.
100% right. Do you think they're going to be any bigger in the future as the hobby expands?
As the hub, I think they're pretty big right now. It's just the laws and regulations where a lot of people are kind of losing their right to breed these animals. They're like they've dedicated a lot of their like time, resources. They've bonded and they've like created amazing facilities with these animals, right?
Hmm.
But then the government comes in and says, hey, they're an invasive species. You can't own these here. And so luckily we have US ARC who's fighting for us, you know, like support them. Please go check out their website. Like learn your laws and regulations for these guys because not every state can have them. Um,
Yeah.
but they do a tremendous job, you know,
Yeah.
putting the word out there. Like, so we as keepers know what's going on as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Absolutely.
give us a voice with like, cause you know, like one person's not going to do, like the government's going to be like, who are you? Right. But when we have an entire industry joining together and we're like, hey, like, you don't know the information. Like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Like you're misunderstanding, you know? So
Yeah.
please go check them out.
Yeah.
Learn your laws and regulations.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. I'll make sure that we include a link towards for US ARC and the Lacey Act. It's very, very
Yeah.
important stuff to read. So 100%. Thank
So
you, Jess, for mentioning that. We'll
back to
definitely add
your
it.
back to your question, I think it's kind of like plateaued because of that. We're kind of not sure where that's going. A lot of the Florida breeders,
Yeah,
they got out of it or they're getting out of it,
they
and
have
that's,
to.
you know, they thrive out there. Like, I mean, it's just so perfect.
For a hobbyist or someone who is interested in getting a Tegu, who do you think a good owner would be?
Ooh.
I know.
Like, okay, so like an ideal keeper or an ideal like person to buy from?
Oh, an ideal keeper. So,
Keep. Oh, okay.
yeah.
So an ideal keeper would be someone who does their research, like do a lot of research before you get them, but also before you buy an animal or bring them into your home or adopt, like learn about them, like are you ready for this? And also prepare the enclosure first. Like have the space for it. Like what I see is people are like, well, it's going to take a while. So I'm going to start them off in this and then I'll figure out as I go. Like, no, like just have a game plan for it now because they will get big. And before you know it, they're going to need a full size enclosure.
Yeah. Yeah. For Rosie, you know, when we first got her, again, tiny little Tegu, she was in a
Yep.
4x2x2 and she was doing great in there. Now she is
Hmm.
in an 8x4x4 foot enclosure. It's massive.
And she utilizes all the space, right?
Exactly. Like she could probably potentially go even bigger, to be
More,
honest.
yeah.
Like, but she's
Yep.
got great basking spots, great digging spots. She's got a pool. Like, you know, she's got all of the things that her little Tegu heart can desire.
Yeah, they do need that. They like to soak in their water.
She doesn't.
So you want it. Yeah, like not everyone does, but like they like to have the like ability to, I should
Exactly.
say.
That's the
And they're
thing.
actually really great swimmers. If you've seen them swim, they're so cute.
Little so that like very like sleek, like kind of like iguana swim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love it.
Yep.
So then the next thing is, does Zen, since this is a Zen habitat show, do we have an appropriate enclosure for said tegus?
I believe you do. The thing about the enclosure space is having a temperature gradient for them because they will regulate their own temperature. So when they need the heat, they'll go to the basking spot, but when they're getting too warm, they'll go to the cooler spot. So like you have to have a large enough space where they can regulate their own body temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because it's such a large lizard, they need to really move its
Yep.
whole body somewhere else. You know,
Yeah.
if you have a
Yep.
3 foot lizard, then you have to have another 3 foot of space somewhere else. That's not where they are.
Yep.
No, you
And
know,
that's
makes
what
sense.
like when we put them outside, actually, they actually got a lot stronger from the natural sunlight and just having the ability to like climb up the cork or the wood that's in there. And you see them like actually build muscle in their lower legs and they're kind of like standing really strong and proud. And it's been the most rewarding is like actually getting them from small size and getting them to a built enclosure outside. And you see them early mornings because inside they don't wake up until 10. They're
Yeah,
just like,
same.
it's dark. Like I'm not. But when they're out here, I see them like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They're like getting the early morning sunlight.
Oh, I love
So
that.
definitely different behavior inside and outside.
Yeah, and you're so fortunate to live in an area that you can do this. Like that is so great.
Yeah,
I live in New
absolutely.
England. We can't have tegus outside. We can for maybe like 2 weeks. You know,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit longer than that, but you know.
So all our tegus are brumating right now. I have a couple that are being stubborn and they're just like, I still like food, I still like basking, and I don't want to go to sleep. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yep.
But the majority of them are sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's great
It gives you a
because
little bit of a break.
I want them to stay outside. I want them to have the space. So
Yeah.
as soon as it gets cold enough, they start doing their own thing. They start like nature
Yeah.
kicks in, they brumate,
Yeah.
and I bring them in safely inside and
Yeah.
I check on them every once in a while, but they're in a deep sleep right now. They even have their winter coat or that thick shed.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Hmm.
awesome. Yeah, so when they bust out in
Yeah.
spring, it's just gonna be like pop.
Yeah, and it's their coat that actually like protects them through, while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
So that's important, but also when they come out of brumation, you have to really get them on a proper diet with a proper supplement, like
Yeah.
because they need to shed that and it's really thick.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And
Hmm.
something that I've recently learned, I actually learned from you that red tegus shed differently than black and white tegus. So
They do a bit, yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Because it's not that she's having like a horrible, horrible shed, but her shed's not great. But what I've learned from you is to, vitamin B complex. Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
amazing for them. So thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome. And that's the thing about the industry too, is just we're all friends, If you have a question, we're not going to be like, hey, you're doing this wrong. It's your fault. It's like, you know what? There's a way to fix this. Like, let's
Yeah.
team together. Because it's all about friendship. It's about community. It's
Mhm.
about the health of your animal. So,
Yeah.
like, let's all be together. And, like, this is a journey,
Yeah.
And there's no, like, we're not trying to rush to a finish line.
No.
Like, this is it. This
Yeah.
is, we're going through
We're
it right
passionate
now.
about this for a reason,
Yep.
and we are
Yep.
all in it,
Absolutely.
like we're in it because we love what we do, and that's
Hmm.
it. Okay, so we have some fan questions, and one of
Okay.
them you already answered, and it was about Tegu puberty. So that was really
Yeah.
great because that is definitely a
Yeah.
big thing that a lot of people, I guess, don't know that they do go through this big hormonal change, and they can turn into
Yeah.
not so friendly for a little while.
They do grow out of it.
Yes.
You just have to be patient with them and,
It's just like
give
human
them their space
teenagers,
when they go.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was pretty
Attitude.
difficult, let's be real. Like
No comment.
I think it has to do with like we're like the rebellious like reptile
Oh,
girls,
yeah.
right? So we got into trouble.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Oh, but the Tegus are like rebellious at that age too. They're just
Yeah.
like, you want me to do this? No, I'm
No.
gonna go do this.
No, I want to bite you. I'm gonna bite you.
Yeah.
I've only had one Tegu bite my entire existence of Tegu, and it wasn't even. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. That does
Yeah.
not mean that a Tegu bite can't be bad. This one was a little warning bite, and she just grabbed
Mhm.
and let go. And I'm really happy that that's all it was because it could have been a lot
Yeah.
worse.
They have their body language, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they'll tell you when, hey, I'm not happy with this. Or
Mm-hmm.
they're telling you, hey, I'm in a feeding frenzy and anything that moves is fair game. So
Yes.
I think when you're working with tegus, you really have to learn their body language and stay calm.
Yeah.
I think that don't, like, once you're just like, oh my God, da da da, when you freak out, you freak them out too, and it gets worse. So
Yeah.
just stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
If they're getting away from you, what I learned, it's kind of like working in the clinic, and you get this cat that's like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
wrap them in a towel.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wrap them in a towel, like
Make them feel
you
secure.
kind of like
Yeah.
yeah, and then all their claws are like within the towel, so they're not gonna scratch you, and you just kind of
Yeah.
like a burrito hug, like a tegu hug. Like you're just like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay. And then you just calmly put them like in their enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to be safe.
Yeah.
So
And
when they're like being like that, they're just like something triggered them.
yeah, no, absolutely. And
Hmm.
I feel that too because like I don't want to be like if I'm uncomfortable, yeah, swaddle me up, put me back to bed. I'll be
Yeah. Like just a blanket, just like
yeah, I know. Give me my weighted blanket. Here we go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Tegus actually like they respond really well to that. Like sometimes you'll get the occasional death roll within the towel, but you're
Mhm.
just to hold them and you don't squeeze them, but just like
Yeah, just
and then just kind of put them on their way. You're
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. So the other question from our fans is I wanted to talk about some good food options and some good staples for tegus. What sort of things do you like to feed your guys?
It depends on how many I'm feeding at the time.
Yeah.
And it's all because when you have 13, you have to think about you want to give them high quality food. You want to take care of them. You want to give them what they need, but you also want to save a little bit of money. So I have a freezer full of rodents for them. And it's not just rats because you can't, they can, but they'll get fatty from that and it's not sustainable to just feed them rats all the time. So I have rats, I have chicks, I have organ meats like liver, heart,
Yeah.
um,
All that good stuff.
that.
Yeah.
But if you're feeding whole prey like at least once a week, like they do get everything they need from that. But if you're supplementing with like organ meats, you have to calcium dust them. And depending on, okay, so the tricky part is D3, right? Because it is a fat soluble. So it does get stored in their fat. So you can have D3 toxicity in animals, and that's a really big thing. So you do want to know what you're doing when you're doing with that. So when you're doing, like when they're little, they'll eat bugs. So they'll eat crickets, dubias, mealworms. You do want to like D3 calcium dust them. Don't overdo it, just like a dust like you would do with geckos. But yeah, if you start just dousing everything in calcium D3, you may have a problem later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do your research on that. That's a big one,
Yeah.
is diet. They do eat everything though. They basically eat everything.
Because they are omnivores. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
They definitely
So,
do.
but also too, people say, "Hey, I can't get my tegu to eat their greens, their vegetables. They don't want to eat vegetables. They don't want to eat fruits." But if you're gut loading your animal, like your feeders, they're already getting that from them. So if you want your tegus to eat like green beans, let's say, or like zucchini, feed it to the dubias. The
Yeah.
dubias will ingest them, and then the tegus will eat them, and it's kind of like a well-rounded diet.
Yeah.
Like that's how they get
Absolutely.
their veggies. If they don't want to just eat the bowl of veggies, you
Yeah,
know?
no, I know. Rosie is not a big fan of her veggies, but what I tend to do with her is I like the product Reptilinks. I get like
Mm-hmm.
the fruit veggie version. So it's got the fruits,
Yep.
it's got the veggies, and it's got the whole protein or the whole prey items blended down
Yep.
into a nice little sausage. And, it works really well for the one Tegu. It might not be
Yeah.
super cost effective if I had 13 Tegus, but it works
We
really
used
well
to
for
do
me.
Reptilinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Reptilinks actually has a Tegu hatchling
Yeah.
like bundle.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have different sizes. They have the ones that come in a tube where it's just you can just put it out, like
Squeeze
take it
it. Yeah.
out, and it's just yeah. So it's not in the link because Tegu when they're little, like they can't eat the whole like sausage, or you can cut them too, but
Okay, so I think we went over some really great Tegu information, and this is the part of the show where I want to talk to you more about your career. Like I said in the beginning of the show, to kind of, help others who might be interested in doing this. And it was really big for me when I was learning to like learn from other people. So I just want to be that person and provide information for others. So here we are. So my first question I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue a career similar to yours?
do it.
Do it. Yes.
Do your research. Okay. So do your research. And I know when you get started, there's so many options. Like this whole world opens up to you, right? So learn what you want to work with first. Don't try to do 20 different species at a time. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and you're going to get overwhelmed really quickly. So find what you want to work with, like a specialty. Like I want to specialize in crested geckos. Well, what within the crested geckos do you want to work with? Because that also opens up so many opportunities and different ways that you can go with that. So what specifically do you want to do is the biggest advice.
Yeah.
You can get overwhelmed really quickly because there's so many amazing reptiles out there.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? Focus on that and see like is it cost savvy for you, because this hobby can swallow you up because you're getting this animal and you're like, oh well, it's just it's inexpensive, but you're taking care of this animal for the entirety of its life, right? So That's where the real cost comes in, is the maintenance, it's the housing, it's the time that you invest with them. So
Yeah,
figure out what you want to do
yeah.
first. Yeah.
Research. You have
Yeah.
to.
Have a game plan.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so is there a myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
The biggest myth or misconception is that there's only one good way to do it. And sometimes you'll come across the wrong people where they'll really get upset with you for doing it one way. But my biggest thing is you don't want them to just exist in your collection. You don't want them to just be there. You want them thriving. You want them happy. Like, are they getting the enrichment that they need, or are they just kind of just living there with you, you
Hmm.
know? So there's not the myth is there's only one way to do it. That's not true. There's so many different ways. And the way I approach it is I learn. Like, I read books, I find out all the information I can, I piece it all together, I ask people that have a lot of experience with it.
Hmm.
But also, I'm going to go look up the natural environment of these animals, you know,
Yeah,
because how can we replicate that? Like, what can we do to make them feel like the most like comfortable, you know?
yeah,
Like, and it's not even just checking the weather for 1 month of the year. It's what is the overall picture of their environment, their natural environment, and how can we replicate that for them?
yeah, absolutely. That is so important. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And here at Zen, we're really big on the whole thrive thing. That is
Mm-hmm.
what we are here for. Like, we want to make reptile husbandry, we want to bring it up. We want to advance it. We want to,
Absolutely.
really show that these animals are so special and they
Mm-hmm.
deserve to be treated as such. They deserve to have everything appropriate. They deserve to
Yep.
have a naturalistic environment. Like, I,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would want if I was a little lizard.
Funny thing too, okay, for your Tegu, have you noticed that she doesn't like it when you move things around in her enclosure? Like, have
Sometimes
you noticed that? Yeah.
she can be a
Because,
little
like,
set in her
sometimes,
ways.
yeah, and they'll actually move their furniture around too. Like, whatever you have, they're just like, I like it like this.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about letting them thrive and you build this beautiful enclosure for them, sometimes they're not going to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to move it to what makes them comfortable. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
My biggest
I gave you
advice.
the resources.
Yeah. No, my biggest advice for anyone who is setting up a Tegu enclosure, if you're going to do live plants, make sure they're potted in like heavy, heavy pots because they are going to get knocked over and dug up.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. We don't actually have natural like plants in the enclosure. So we actually have it like I don't know if you can see, but
Yeah.
we have a fig tree
Oh,
here.
yeah. So you got
You know,
shade
so
coming
we
up over.
yeah, and then we have another like fruit bearing tree
Oh, very
here.
nice.
So that also gives them fruit. Sometimes like I'll just pick it like once it's ripe and I'll give them like fresh like figs from the tree. But it provides them like shelter almost, you know,
Yeah.
even though it's not in the cage, it's outside. So it's giving them that shade. It
Yeah.
makes them feel safe.
Yeah.
It protects them from the elements. Like,
Yeah.
is it going to rain? Is it going to, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if your animals don't like it inside, you can
Mhm.
always have it on the outside to kind of like build that like
Yeah.
around them, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Your Tegus are spoiled. All right. So then a couple more questions.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge that you're facing in your current projects and how are you tackling it?
My biggest hurdle, I would say, is I love everything. I want everything. And I do it, okay, the husbandry and then like taking care of them, that part is 100% me, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
So I'll have my friends come over or like people come to help me.
Hmm.
Anthony builds these enclosures, like he does all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it helps to work with the team,
Yeah.
but when you're doing a lot of things solo, the problem I'm having is personal time.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so when you start a business and something that you're so passionate about, you end up wanting to do it 24/7.
Hmm.
Um, I find myself working 7 days a week, and people
Yeah.
are like, let's hang out. And I'm like, I got work to do. And they're like, it's Sunday. And I'm like,
Yeah. I got work to do.
Animals need time, like every day. Like you can
Yeah.
do something for them every day. So I think narrowing down my focus, because I did specialize, right? So we did start with crested geckos, and then we went through like the New Caledonia species, and then I was like, I want everything. So now I literally work 7 days a week, and I love it. I'm not I just,
Yeah,
but also find time for yourself, because your
absolutely.
mental health, your physical health, like your family, like your
Hmm.
friends,
Yeah,
don't shut them out because you're doing too much.
yeah. And that is super important because it
Hmm.
can be, burnout is real. Like, burnout is so
It's real.
real. Like, you
Yeah.
work so hard to take care of others, other
Hmm.
creatures, not even
Yeah.
humans. It's still a lot. Like, and you sometimes forget to take care of yourself. And
Exactly.
I think we've
So
all
I
been
think
there. Yeah.
the number one thing you have to realize that, yeah, you have all these amazing animals, and yeah, like to you, they're number one, they come first. But really, you have to realize that if you don't take care of yourself mentally and physically, like
Hmm.
they're going to suffer as well.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself, do what you're capable of. Like,
Hmm.
don't overwhelm yourself because you want to do so much, especially so quickly. And if you need it, don't feel afraid to ask for help. There's so many people willing to help you. Like, you just have to find them and you just have to ask.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of off topic, but people who need to rehome their animals, there's this like stigma, or they think that people are going to judge them, etc. No, I'm going to applaud you if you are going to rehome your animal because you know
Absolutely.
that you are doing what's best for them. So
Yep,
don't feel guilty if
absolutely.
you have to rehome an animal because it's too much for you. You are number
Yeah,
one.
like I commend people for that, for realizing that, you know what,
Hmm.
I'm overwhelmed or this isn't working out for me, and find the right people to rehome to.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
there are resources for that. So
Yeah.
you just have to ask.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So that's I think that's all very important.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So this one's a fun question. If you could go
Okay.
back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Do it.
Just do it.
Everything, just do it.
Is the theme.
So 18, okay, 18-year-old me, right? I wanted to be independent right away. 18-year-old me, like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I don't want to be under my parents' roof. So I
Mhm.
did move out when I was 18.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's fine. If
Yeah.
you do, great. Like, just have a plan.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I think having a plan also kind of takes away from living, because you start over planning, right? So
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, when I'm ready for this, I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
To an extent, that's perfect. Like, you should have a game plan like that, but also over planning, like when it comes to your own life, like
Hmm.
you'll wait forever to
Yeah.
do something.
You'll never be
You're
ready.
waiting for the,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
for me, I, okay, so I went to school, like, it started part-time because I
Hmm.
was working full-time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then as I was working more, school kind of took the back burner on that.
Hmm.
And then my reptiles, like it was just a hobby. Like
Hmm.
I didn't really do it as a business until I was like, you know what? Like, why am I waiting for after school or after work or when I get this part in my career? Like, if you really want to do animals and you can facilitate that, do it.
Yeah.
Like, have a plan for it, do it, have fun with it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, if I could give myself advice, is what are you really passionate about? Like, like, don't ever regret not doing something,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
especially like if it's for you, and I say that with a grain of salt. Like, just as long as it's not hurting anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if it's something that you're so passionate about, like, do it. Like,
Yeah.
do it for yourself. Like, just,
For sure.
you got it. So if you want the reptile career, if you want it, like,
You got to do it.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
you gotta
it.
try, you gotta try. And if you're worried about failing, like, just have a plan. Like,
Hmm.
like reach out to people. Like, hey, this is what's going on. How can I fix it?
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, like, don't do that.
No. No.
Like, there's even now, like, I've been doing this for so long, and I always think in the back of my mind, how can I do it better?
Yeah.
And not just better, but how can I do it more efficiently? How can I, like, save time? How can I do
Yeah.
better by them?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. No, I think that's super important. Yeah.
my answer.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
I think that's great. I'm all about this positivity. It's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
So I have one last question, and it is, what's one question that you wish I asked, and how would you have answered it?
You know, honestly, because I could talk about reptiles like all day long. So what is one question that you didn't write down and you wanted to ask
Oh,
me?
God. Oh, spin it around. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I think, we should talk about what is something, give me an odd factoid about the Tegu.
Oh my gosh, you know what? People don't realize that they can drop their tails. Don't grab them by the tail. Like, it's rare, but it hasn't happened to me. But there are people on like online that have said, "Oh my God, my Tegu threw its tail at me." I'm like, that can happen.
Oh my God.
Okay, it's not like a crested gecko. Like, it's not going to spook and then drop its tail. Like, it has to really, really feel threatened to have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it can happen.
Uh-huh.
And if it does, they actually regen part of their tail.
Oh.
So depending on how much they're regenning, it's not going to be like a gargoyle gecko where it's like fully regen. Like, they're going to have like a little like, or at the end, sometimes they'll get their tail nipped off at the very end, and that kind of like grows back like squiggles.
Little silly tails.
Yeah. So people, like, when you see that squiggly tail, it's not a kink, it's not a defect, that is them regenning part of their tail. So if you're saying like, oh, that one has a kink tail, like,
yeah. Huh. Well, thank you for telling me that, because I believe M told me that they could drop their tails, but not like drop, like it, you know, like a traumatic thing could happen and they could lose their tail.
It breaks off, yeah.
Yeah, but if it actually has
usually
that,
happens in
like that star type shape, that like crested.
That's what I've seen. That's what I've seen online. That's what I've heard. But I've personally never had it happen to me, so I can't tell you like as a fact.
We don't want that to happen.
Yeah, but from what I've seen online, I've only seen a couple examples of it. They're on younger tegus, like they're like juvenile size, just before the puberty stage or during the puberty stage.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen an adult do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting.
And especially like you don't like their tails are thick. Or, can you? Yeah, and it's not even like at the butt end of the tail. It's like kind of like further down.
Oh, like in one of the segments. Like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't want that to happen.
There's always something to learn.
Yeah, you know? No, that was an excellent fact. That was something that I don't think a lot of people are going to know. So that was brilliant. Thank you. So I guess that's all I have for questions. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I think we went over so much good information. Your tegus are amazing. Your reptiles are just, everything about you is really amazing. You're just a beautiful person inside and out. And
thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. So
yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said, I could talk reptiles. I could talk animals, you know, like being vet tech, right? Going to school. Like
what do we want to talk about next?
Like, people haven't even asked me. I'm like, do you want to talk about livestock? Like, you want to talk about cows right now? And they're just like, what? I'm like, I can literally talk about any animal. Like, let's go.
All right, Kasey Talks Critters, cow episode coming up. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, it's been another episode of Kasey Talks Critters. I have Jess with me, and we talked tegus. We learned a ton. We learned that tegus can drop their tails. What? That's wild. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that notification bell for more episodes like this. We'll be back next month. Thanks for watching.